Queen Caroline has just been introduced by the Duke of Argyll to Jeanie, and says to the Duke, "What is your particular interest in this young woman? She doesn't seem," and she scanned Jeanie as she said this with the eye of a connoisseur, "much qualified to alarm my friend the Duchess's jealousy." "I think your Majesty," replied the Duke, smiling in his turn, "will allow my taste may be a pledge for me on that score. Then, though she has not much the air d'une grande dame, I suppose she is some 30th cousin in the terrible chapter of Scottish genealogy." "No, madam," said the Duke, "but I wish some of my nearer relations had half her worth, honesty, and affection." "Her name must be Campbell, at least," said Queen Caroline. "No, madam, her name is not quite so distinguished, if I may be permitted to say so," answered the Duke. "Ah, but she comes from Inverera, or Argyllshire," said the sovereign. "She has never been further north in her life than Edinburgh, madam." "Then my conjectures are all ended," said the Queen, "and your Grace must yourself take the trouble to explain the affair of your protégée." With that precision and easy brevity which is only acquired by habitually conversing in the higher ranks of society, and which is the diametrical opposite of that protracted style of disquisition which squires call potter and which men call prose, the Duke explained the singular law under which Effie Deans had received sentence of death, and detailed the affectionate exertions which Jeanie had made in behalf of her sister, for whose sake she was willing to sacrifice all but truth and conscience. Queen Caroline listened with attention. She was rather fond, it must be remembered, of an argument, and soon found matter in what the Duke told her for raising difficulties to his request. "It appears to me, my lord," she replied, "that this is a severe law, but still it is adopted upon good grounds, I am bound to suppose, as the law of the country, and the girl has been convicted under it. The very presumptions which the law construes into a positive proof of guilt exist in her case, and all that your Grace has said concerning the possibility of her innocence may be a very good argument for annulling the Act of Parliament, but cannot, while it stands good, be admitted in favour of any individual convicted upon that statute." The Duke saw and avoided the snare, for he was conscious that, by replying to the argument, he must have been inevitably led to a discussion, in the course of which the Queen was likely to be hardened in her own opinion, and so she became obliged, out of mere respect to consistency, to let the criminal suffer. "If your Majesty," he said, "will condescend to hear my poor countrywoman herself, perhaps she may find an advocate in your own heart, more able than I am to combat the doubts suggested by your understanding." The Queen seemed to acquiesce, and the Duke made a signal for Jeanie to advance from the spot where she had hitherto remained, watching countenances which were too long accustomed to suppress all apparent signs of emotion to convey to her any interesting intelligence. Her Majesty could not help smiling at the awe-struck manner in which the quiet, demure figure of the little Scotswoman advanced towards her, and yet more at the first sound of her broad northern accent. But Jeanie had a voice low and sweetly tuned, an admirable thing in woman, and she besought her ladyship to have pity on a poor misguided young creature, in tones so affecting that, like the notes of some of her native songs, provincial vulgarity was lost in pathos. "Stand up, young woman," said the Queen, but in a kind tone, "and tell me what sort of a barbarous people your countryfolk are, where child murder is become so common as to require the restraint of laws like yours." "If your ladyship pleases," answered Jeanie, "there are many places besides Scotland where mothers are unkind to their own flesh and blood." It must be observed that the disputes between George II and Frederick, Prince of Wales, were then at the highest, and that the good-natured part of the public laid the blame on the Queen. She coloured highly, and darted a glance of most penetrating character, first at Jeanie, and then at the Duke. Both sustained it unmoved, Jeanie from total unconsciousness of the offence she had given, and the Duke from his habitual composure. But in his heart he thought, "My unlucky protégée has, with this luckless answer, shot dead by a kind of chance medley her only hope of success." Lady Suffolk, good-humouredly and skilfully, interposed in this awkward crisis. "You should tell this lady," she said to Jeanie, "the particular causes which render this crime common in your country." Some thinks it's a succession. That is, it's the catty stool, if your ladyship pleases, said Jeanie, looking down and curtsying. The what? Said Lady Suffolk, to whom the phrase was new, and who besides was rather deaf. That's the stool of repentance, madam, if it please your ladyship, answered Jeanie, for light life and conversation, and for breaking the seventh commandment. Here she raised her eyes to the Duke, saw his hand at his chin, and totally unconscious of what she had said, out of joint, she gave double effect to the innuendo by stopping short and looking embarrassed. As for Lady Suffolk, she retired like a covering party, which, having interposed betwixt their retreating friends and the enemy, have suddenly drawn on themselves a fire unexpectedly severe. The deuce take the lass, thought the Duke of Argyll to himself. There goes another shot, and she has killed with both barrels right and left. Indeed, the Duke had himself his share of the confusion, for, having acted as master of ceremonies to this innocent offender, he felt much in the circumstances of a country squire, who, having introduced his spaniel into a well-appointed drawing-room, is doomed to witness the disorder and damage which arises to china and to dress-gowns in consequence of its untimely frolics. Jeanie's last chance hit, however, obliterated the ill impression which had arisen from the first, for Her Majesty had not so lost the feelings of her wife in those of her Queen, but that she could enjoy a jest at the expense of her good Suffolk. She turned towards the Duke of Argyll with a smile, which marked that she enjoyed the triumph, and observed, "The Scotch are a rigidly moral people." Then, again applying herself to Jeanie, she asked how she travelled up from Scotland. "Upon my foot mostly, madam," was the reply. "What, all that immense way upon foot? How far can you walk in a day?" 25 miles and a bittock. "And a what?" said the Queen, looking towards the Duke of Argyll. "And about 5 miles more," replied the Duke. "I thought I was a good walker," said the Queen, "but this shames me sadly." "May your ladyship never hae sae weary a heart that ye canna be sensible of the weariness of the limbs," said Jeanie. That came better off, thought the Duke. It's the first thing she has said to the purpose. "And I didna just other get a walk the hale way, neither, for I'd whiles the cast of a cart, I had the cast of a horse from Ferrybridge, and divers other easements," said Jeanie, cutting short her story, for she observed the Duke made the sign he had fixed upon. "With all those accommodations," answered the Queen, "you must have had a very fatiguing journey, and I fear to little purpose, since, if the King were to pardon your sister, in all probability it would do her little good, for I suppose you people of Edinburgh would hang her out of spite." "She will sink herself now outright," thought the Duke. But he was wrong. The shoals in which Jeanie had touched in this delicate conversation lay underground, and were unknown to her. The rock was above water, and she avoided it. She was confident, she said, that both town and country would rejoice to see His Majesty taking compassion on a poor, unfriended creature. "His Majesty has not found it so in a late instance," said the Queen, "but I suppose my Lord Duke would advise him to be guided by the votes of the rebel themselves, who should be hanged and who spared." "No, madam," said the Duke, "but I would advise His Majesty to be guided by his own feelings and those of his royal consort, and thus, I am sure, punishment will attach itself only to guilt, and even then with cautious reluctance." "Well, my lord," said Her Majesty, "all those fine speeches do not convince me of the propriety of so soon showing any mark of favour to your, I suppose I must not say rebellious, but at least your very disaffected and intractable metropolis. Why, the whole nation is in league to screen the savage and abominable murderers of that unhappy man. Otherwise, how is it possible but that, of so many perpetrators, and engaged in so public an action for such a length of time, one at least must have been recognized? Even this wench, for aught I can tell, may be a depository of the secret. Hark ye, young woman, had you any friends engaged in the Porteous mob?" "No, madam," answered Jeanie, happy that the question was so framed that she could, with a good conscience, answer it in the negative. "But I suppose," continued the Queen, "if you were possessed of such a secret, you would hold it matter of conscience to keep it to yourself." "I would pray to be directed and guided what is the line of duty, madam," answered Jeanie. "Yes, and take that which suited your own inclinations," replied Her Majesty. "If it like you, madam," said Jeanie, "I would again to the end of the earth to save the life of John Porteous, or of any other unhappy man in his condition. but I might lawfully doubt how far I am called upon to be the avenger of his blood, though it may become the civil magistrate to do so. He is dead in Gante's place, and they that have slain him must answer for their own act. But my sister, my poor sister Effie, still lives, though her days and hours are numbered. She still lives, and a word of the king's mouth might restore her to a broken-hearted old man that never, in his daily and nightly exercise, forgot to pray that his majesty might be blessed with a long and a prosperous reign, and that his throne, and the throne of his posterity, might be established in righteousness. Oh, madam, if ever ye kenned what it was to sorrow for and with a sinning and suffering creature, whose mind is sae tossed that she can be neither called fit to live or die, have some compassion on our misery. Save an honest house from dishonour, and an unhappy girl, not 18 years of age, from an early and dreadful death. Alas, it is not when we sleep soft and wake merrily ourselves that we think on other folks' sufferings. Our hearts are waxed high within us then, and we are for righting our own wrongs and fighting our own battles. But when the hour of trouble comes to the mind or to the body, and seldom may it visit your ladyship, and when the hour of death comes, that comes to high and low, lang and late may be yours, oh my lady, then it isna what we have done for ourselves, but what we had done for others, that we think on maist pleasantly. And the thoughts that ye have intervened to spare the poor thing's life will be sweeter in that hour, come when it may, than if a word of your mouth could hang the hell-porteous mob at the tail of a tow. Tear followed tear down Jeanie's cheeks, as, with features glowing and quivering with emotion, she pleaded her sister's cause with a pathos which was at once simple and solemn. "This is eloquent," said Her Majesty to the Duke of Argyll. "Young woman," she continued, addressing herself to Jeanie, "I cannot grant a pardon to your sister, but you shall not want my warm intercession with Her Majesty. Take this housewife," she continued, putting a small embroidered needle-case into Jeanie's hands. "Do not open it now, but at your leisure you will find something in it which will remind you that you have had an interview with Queen Caroline." Jeanie, having her suspicions thus confirmed, dropped on her knees, and would have expanded herself in gratitude, but the Duke, who was upon thorns lest she should say more or less than just enough, touched his chin once more. "Our business is, I think, ended for the present, my Lord Duke," said the Queen, "and I trust to your satisfaction. Hereafter I hope to see your Grace more frequently, both at Richmond and St. James's. Come, Lady Suffolk, we must wish his Grace good morning." They exchanged their parting reverences, and the Duke, so soon as the ladies had turned their backs, assisted Jeanie to rise from the ground and conducted her back through the avenue, which she trod with the feeling of one who walks in her sleep.